Hello and welcome. Um, I'm going to show you how to do basic router configuration. Most of the steps that I'm going to take are geared toward the skills exam for the ICND1 course as the CCNA track. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy a 2621 router. I'm going to turn that off, put a weak car on it, turn that back on, and I copy that. Make my network. And bring up some 2960s switches. And we're going to connect those switches to fast Ethernet 01. Or rather, gigabit Ethernet 01 to fast Ethernet 00. And we're going to make a note of that. Okay. We're going to do DCE from router 1 000 to router 2001. We're going to rename these routers here. This will make it easier for you to remember. Before you start deploying a network, I would suggest that you do exactly what I'm doing right now, because it makes it a lot easier when you're doing your configuration to have a picture in your head of what you are configuring. So 000 from router 2 to 001 router 3, and we're gonna do straight through cable from fast Ethernet 00 to gigabit Ethernet 01, and we're gonna label these things accordingly. Okay. This one's DCE. This one is DCE as per the way we installed the cable. This one is 000. This one here is 001. This is 000. And this is 001. From here, we from this router we connected this straight through cable through FA01. If I'm not mistaken, here we have to double check. It's FA00, so you can see. Sometimes it's very easy to make a mistake, so you have to be really careful when you're doing, especially when you're doing this the first few times. The connection to the switch here was gigabit Ethernet 01, and we're gonna go ahead and confirm that by hovering over the wire Don't click on anything, just hover and it will show you. But you can come back and do that every time, but it's better if you draw your diagram and enter each one of the labels. That way it's a lot easier to understand where you're at. So we're gonna do fast Ethernet 01 to the fast Ethernet connection to this computer, and we're gonna do the same thing on this end. So here's the deal. You've been given an IP address. The IP address is 192.168.1.0. You have to create enough networks out of this IP address to make this network operational. So here's what we're going to do. First of all, I want you to understand that how many networks are here, and you have to remember that routers divide networks. So every port on a router is a network. So that was one network. This is another network. This is another network. And this is another network. Okay, so we have 4 networks. We have to divide this IP address into a minimum of 4 networks. Well, here's the deal. If you have a Class C IP address, such as the one I mentioned, 192.168.1.0, Class C address by default has 256 IP addresses, and it uses a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to break this subnet mask into binaries, just the zeros. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Remember that this is a dotted notation. So what we need to do is we need to divide 256. Let me pull up a calculator here real quick. 256 divided by 4 networks. That's 64. So that means that we can have 4 networks with 64 IP addresses each. So let me see if we can break that down real quick for you here. So you can create a table of your own like this. This breakdown will never change, and you should watch my other videos. The one with the how to subnet an IP address, where I have all the details, steps on how to break an IP address with the formulas and everything. I'm doing this way because it's a lot easier, and I want to concentrate on showing you how to do the actual router configuration. Okay, so this is gonna be my first network. It's gonna be my second network. It's gonna be my third network, and this one's gonna be my fourth network. You should have some principles of subnetting already down. If you're not understanding how I'm breaking down these IP addresses, but in essence, I'm gonna take these 256 addresses, we divide them by 4. That means that we're gonna borrow 2 digits from the subnet mask. 2 digits here will convert to ones, and that gives us 4 IP addresses. It's 2, 4. If I was to borrow another digit, it's 8. Another digit is 16. Another digit is 32, 64, 128. Okay, counting from left to right. So I'm gonna borrow 2 bits from the default subnet mask, so that my new subnet mask will be 255 that, 255 that, 255 that, 192. All the IP addresses within this breakdown are going to have this subnet mask. Routers and switches already in computers are already configured with the understanding of this formula. So the moment I enter the subnet mask with one of the IP addresses that's within each one of these networks, the router already has the understanding. These devices already have the understanding of this mathematics. It's already built into the program. So all I have to do is enter the IP address in the subnet mask, and the router uses its internal smarts or applications and operating system um, to do the same breakdown that I'm doing manually here. So the first network is 192.168.1.0. My first usable IP address is 192.168.1.1. And my range is going to be to 192.168.1.62. And my broadcast here is 192.168.1.63. I'm going to call this usable address range. Okay. My second network is going to be 192.168.1.64. My first usable address in that network is 192.168.1.65, all the way to 192.168.1.126. And my broadcast address is going to be here 192.168.1.127. Okay. And my next network is going to be 192.168.1.128. First usable address is going to be 192.168.1.129 and 192.168.1.190. 192.168.1.191 gonna be my broadcast. And my next network address is gonna be 192.168.1.192. My first usable address in this network is gonna be 192.168.1.193 all the way to 192.168.1.224. And my broadcast address here is 192.168.1.255. So altogether, from 0 to 55, I have 256 IP addresses, because we include this one as an address as well. Between here and here, I got 64 addresses. Between here and here, I got 64 addresses. Between here and here, I got 64 addresses. And between here and here, I have 64 addresses. So now that I've done that, then I can come back to my diagram, and I'm gonna delete these circles. I don't wanna confuse you, but just want you to keep in mind that we're dealing with 4 different networks, and that's why we broke that network down into 4 different areas. So now that we have figured out the network addresses, then we can start assigning network addresses to each one of these networks. So we're gonna assign network address to this first network, 192.168.1.0. We're going to allocate 192.168.1.64 to this network. Okay. With that subnet mask of 26, you can represent the subnet mask using a CIDR here. That would be one way of doing it. I'm borrowing 26 bits from the subnet mask, and that's basically what that means. And furthermore, okay, from here, I can take one of these IP addresses. Say I'm going to take that range right there, and I'm going to subnet a subnet. Check it out. This is what I'm going to do. You don't have to subnet a subnet for the purpose of the application that you're trying to achieve, you can just use the entire range, but you're gonna be wasting a lot of IP addresses. So, but in any case, if I take 255, 255.192, I'm gonna write that in binary numbers, and I'm gonna take this range right here from 128, my IP address here. I'm gonna subnet a subnet. Okay, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna um, break this network into additional networks. So we're gonna break the range of 128 to 191. Okay, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna borrow another bit. We're gonna borrow another bit here. Okay, and that will break our network into two. So we're taking 64 divided by 2 equals 32. So we'll have two networks. Okay. And our first network, second network here. My first network address is going to be 192.168.1.128. Okay. First usable address is 192.168.1.129 all the way to 192.168.1. That's going to be 58. If I'm not mistaken, we're going to have to double check that. 192.168.1.59 or 158 rather, and 159 here. In the second network, it's going to be 192.168.1.160. My first usable range here is going to be 192.168.1.161 to 192.168.1.190. And my broadcast here is 192.168.1.191. These IP addresses, we use the subnet mask 255.255.255.224. Okay, that way we are utilizing this network, breaking it into two. We could break it into more, but I don't want to do that today. I'm gonna create a video later on for what we call variable length subnet mask. For the purpose of this exercise, you don't have to. You can avoid this entire portion, subnetting a subnet. You can just use all these four networks, even if you waste a lot of usable addresses. I'm still wasting some addresses here, but not as much as if I was using all the others. But I challenge you to try to understand this, because this is going to be crucial to your success in this field. All right, so now that we've done that, we're gonna we're going to assign networks. Okay. And what we're going to do here is we're going to assign this network 192.168.1.128 with a subnet mask of 27. And this one is 192.168.1.160 with a subnet mask of 27. Okay. So now that we've done that, I am going to assign IP addresses to these devices. So let's start with this connector here, and we're gonna assign 192.168.1.65. That's the first usable address of the 64 network with a subnet mask of 55.55.55.192. This computer will have the IP address 192.168.1.6 in the same subnet mask and a default gateway of 192.168.1.65. Okay, computers need a default gateway in order to properly communicate to the external networks. Okay. Okay, we should double check this value here. It looks like I made a mistake here. This one is going to be FA00. Sometimes it helps to simply walk away for 2 minutes, come back and then take a quick look at what you've done in order to have a fresh perspective on things. So, and this is important because you're gonna have to do some troubleshooting and diagnosis, and a lot of times you're gonna walk into a network that's already been put together, and you're gonna have to go and look at the numbers and make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. Okay, so to this connector, we're gonna assign 192.168.1.1. That's the first usable address of the 192.168.1.0 network with a subnet mask of 55.55.55.192. And we're gonna assign this PC the address 192.168.1.2 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.192 and a subnet mask of, or a default gateway rather, of 192.168.1.1. Okay. In an actual regular computer, you would need to go to the control panel. Let me show you real quick. And in the control panel, you go to Network and Sharing Center. This is Windows 8. You go to Network Adapters, right click on the adapter that you want to set that configuration for. You scroll down to TCP/IP version 4, click on Properties. And then here you would set the IP address, subnet mask, and gateway address that you have decided to assign to that particular device. In this case, we're dealing with simulation software, Packet Tracer. So what we're going to do is finish assigning IP addresses, and then we'll come back and actually do the configuring of the PCs, and then we'll move on to the routers. In here, what we're going to do is we are going to choose one of these networks that we subnetted, the subnetted network that we subnetted. So in here, we're going to assign 192.168.1.129 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.224. In here, we're going to assign IP address 192.168.1. Let me see that 1.30, 130. Let me see. No, because we're using the 160 here. So, okay, so scratch that. we're gonna assign 161 to this port and 162 to this port with a subnet mask 255, 255, 255.224. Okay, and then to this connector, serial 01, we're gonna assign 192.168.1.129 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.224. And in here, we're gonna assign 192.168.1.130 with a subnet mask of 255.255.224. Okay. Okay. So this is crucial. This is crucial right here because I'm not gonna even start doing my configuration unless I've decided how this is gonna look. Okay, let me attempt to drop this down here for you for reference. Okay. So let me drop that down there. Maybe that will help a little bit. Okay, so that's my breakdown in essence. Now that I've done that, I can start configuring the PCs. So this PC, you will go to IP configuration here, 192.168.1.66 with a certain mask of 55.55.55.192 and a default gateway of 192.168.1.165. So I'm gonna have to fix that. Not 165 but 65. This is a 64 network. Okay. There you go. That's it. Now we're gonna assign this IP address on this other computer. It's 192.168.1.2 with a front-end mask of 255.255.255.192 and a default gateway of 192.168.1.1. All right. Now normally what will happen is that you probably walk up to this device with a laptop that has a serial port and you would connect a console cable, this cable right here, to an RS-232, which is basically a communications port or a serial port. And I would connect that to the console of the device. This will allow me to access the ability to access the operating system that's on this networking device, which happens to be a router. So I can go to the desktop here and use a terminal, take a snapshot of these numbers because this is really important that you remember what is the terminal configuration to access the operating system in these devices. So now I'm inside this first router. Okay. And some of the things that we need to do, to each of the routers is provide a host name first. We also need to set up passwords for accessibility. We need to set up a banner. We also need to set up the no IP domain. This will ensure that if you type something in your command that the system doesn't recognize, it's not going to try to look into a DNS table, which in most cases doesn't exist within the router. When you're doing basic router configuration or basic switch configuration, and it will not freeze your operating system. If you do not do this, if you do not do no IP domain lookup, then it's going to attempt to look for attempt to resolve a name to an IP address or an IP address to a name. and if it doesn't exist, it's gonna hang for a good 2-3 minutes. So we're gonna try to avoid that. We're gonna set the access telnet access. We're gonna set we're gonna configure the console. We're gonna configure the auxiliary port. These ports are in the back of the router, and we need to protect them, so we need to set up a password on them so that if somebody tries to access this device, either physically or remotely, um, they will be required to enter a password. Okay, so then we're going to encrypt the passwords. We're also going to when we're done with that, we're going to configure the port numbers, or configure the interfaces rather, based on what we have put on our table here. We're going to add a description to the interfaces. And we're going to perform the no shutdown. We're going to save the configuration. We're also going to set these devices so that they can be accessed remotely using the name. So this is referred to as IP host configuration. That way, I want to be able to telnet into these devices whether I'm using an IP address or the name of the device. Okay. I think that's pretty much that for this. And then I'm going to check for connectivity. Oh, we're going to set a routing protocol. Okay. And we're going to use Ospf, open shortest path first. And then we're going to set static routes where needed, if needed. And then we're going to check for connectivity. Okay, so these are the instructions, more or less, that you will get. Let me go ahead and save this to the computer. And we're going to call this one ICND1 skills assessment. Okay. So now that we know what we need to do to this router, we're going to go ahead and access the operating system. I'm accessing that router right there. And this is the user executive. In order to go to the privilege executive, you type enable here, and that changes your prompt from a greater than symbol to a number sign. The prompt being at the number sign tells me that I'm in the administrative privilege mode, and in here there's a lot more commands that I can enter, which will allow me to verify connectivity, look at interfaces, and do a whole bunch of things. Copy the random configuration onto non-volatile random access memory. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to type in config t, that's configure terminal. That changes my prompt to the config in brackets. And this tells me that I've accessed another level of administration, if you will, or another level of power that will allow me the ability to perform even more detailed configuration. So the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to try to follow this my list of things that I need to do so that I make sure that I've covered everything. Okay, so hostname first. The command for that is hostname. We're gonna call this one router1. Notice how my prompt changed. The router name is changed. I'm gonna configure the passwords. So we're gonna enable password. Then you type in the password that you want to have in that device. And then we're going to enable secret, and then you enter the password that you want. This will put a password so that when people try to access this device, they will need to enter a password before they can go into the user mode, and then another password before they can go into the executive mode. Okay. Um, so now we're going to set up a banner. So the command is banner, MOTD, that's message of the day. Then you enter a number sign. Everything that's within this number sign is what will be displayed to the people who are trying to access this device. Okay, you're gonna need to enclose that in a number sign, otherwise it's gonna give you an error. And then we're gonna set up the telnet. We're gonna do the no IP domain lookup, no IP domain hyphen lookup, and then we're gonna set the telnet access. That's line VTY 0 to 15. We're gonna enter a password here, and in here we're gonna set the executive timeout of 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Basically, what this means is that if somebody accesses the router and there's no activity for 5 minutes and 30 seconds, the system is gonna automatically disconnect that connection. Okay, so we call this an executive timeout. We're gonna do a logging synchronous here, and what this does, it allows the user to continue to type a command even if the operating system is displaying a message. And so that what it does, it allows you to continue to type a command even in the middle of sending a message to the user, or to you, the administrator, in this case. And that allows you to have more control over the commands that you're typing. Okay, so it's login synchronous, and then we're going to type in here login, which will allow a user who's trying to connect via VTY, which is Telnet port 23, the ability to log in using a password, the password that we have assigned. Normally, you can type exit here. You don't really have to, but it's recommended that you type exit so that you know that you've exited the line VTY, and that you're ready to go into a different line. So in here, we're gonna do a line console 0. That's how you get into the console. That's the port in the back of this device, the one that we're accessing through this laptop. We're gonna put a password on this so that in the future, if anybody tries to access this device and they connect to the console connector, they will need to enter a password, the password that we assign here. Normally, you will want to create a more sophisticated password, maybe have numbers and letters, so that in at least 8 characters, so that it's not easy decipherable. Okay, so we're gonna set up an executive timeout here of 5 minutes and 30 seconds, and we're gonna log in synchronous as well, and then log in. Then we're going to exit. Now we're gonna go to the line auxiliary 0, and same thing. We're gonna set up a password here, and you're gonna set up an executive timeout. 5 minutes and 30 seconds is it's kind of average. You might have to refer to your company policy for what executive timeout is required as per the policy of the company that you're working with. We're gonna do the login sync here, and then login. We're gonna press end, and we're gonna copy the running configuration, which is running on random access memory, and we're going to save this configuration, the startup configuration, to sectioning memory that is referred to as non-volatile random access memory, or NVRAM. That way, if this device gets shut down and when it reboots, it's going to look for this startup configuration that we just saved. So every time you make a change to the operating system um, configuration, you have to save it from running to the startup configuration because they're in two different locations. And the running configuration is volatile. When you turn the device off, the information dissipates, but non-volatile random access memory, as the name conveys it, is non-volatile. So therefore, even if you turn the power off, it keeps the information. It's similar to a flash memory, if you will. Okay. All right. So now that we've done that, we're going to encrypt passwords. So we're going to go back into the global configuration and type secure service password. Service password hyphen encryption is the complete command. If you are not sure or if you happen to not remember the entire command, it's always useful to use the question mark. As you can see, I enter a question mark after service, and you gave me all the possible options in this case. So that's done. So I'm going to, now we're going to configure interfaces. So let me go back here, make sure that I got the right interfaces. We're going to configure 000 with that IP address and FA00 with this IP address and subnet mask accordingly. So uh, interface FA00 takes me into the interface. Notice how my command prompt changed to if, and now I can add a description. This is the command. Anything that you type after description is what is going to be displayed as this description to this interface. So this is going to be link to LAN 192.168.1.0 with a subnet mask of 26. Okay, and now is IP address. This is how you assign an IP address to this particular interface, 192.168.1.1 with a space subnet mask of 255.255.255.192. Then we're gonna issue the node shutdown command. This will basically telling this device to turn on that port. And notice how over here it changed to green, and now it's trying to connect to the switch. The switch is trying to resolve the connection. In about a second, it's gonna turn green as well, identifying that it has found and resolved a connection to that particular device. So now we're going to end, copy run star, and this is what I'm telling you. You need to continuously save your configuration as you're working, because if something happens, power goes out or what have you, you don't want to lose all the work that you have done. In especially when you're taking exams like final exams, or when you go to take the CCNT exam or the CCNA exam, you're gonna be timed. So you have to get used to saving the configuration as you go along. Let's go back to config T. We're gonna access the interface 000, and we're gonna add a description here. This is a link to serial interface router 2. Okay, and we're gonna set an IP address 192.168.1.128 with a subnet mask of 27. That's 224 here. Oh, I didn't like that. Oh, I know why. Because I enter a network address, and that's not what we're doing here, right? We are entering an interface address. So let's do that again. IP address 192.168.1.130 with a subnet mask of 55.255.255.224. There you go. Now we're gonna enter the no shutdown command, and that turns that port on. Notice how it's on, but is not gonna be completely on until we configure the other interface on the other end. So for now, we're gonna do in copy run star config t. Let me go back into this interface 000 because we need to set a clock rate. Since this is the DCE connection, we're gonna say 5400. You might want to read the instructions rather carefully. If you're giving instructions, specific instructions, because sometimes they might ask you to configure it to a different speed. All right. Now we've done that. I've done my configuration. Let me redo my banner of the day. There you go. I wanted to identify this as router 1 so that when we try to telnet into it, it will tell us, it will give us this banner of the day. So do copy run star in. Let's see, we're gonna come back and set a routing protocol later. Okay, so we're gonna do up to here and then come back and do a routing protocol configuration. So let's delete that. Now we're gonna walk over to the second router and we're gonna connect to that router using a console cable. And now we're gonna turn this on and use the terminal configuration to access it. Now we don't want this configuration, we don't want the initial configuration to be automatic or to continue with configuration dialog. So enable, we're gonna do the same thing that we did there. We're gonna set up a host name, config t host router 2, set up passwords, enable password, and enable secret. And then now we're going to set up the banner. Okay, now we're going to do the no IP domain. And we're gonna set Telnet Access, line VTY 0 to 15, password Cisco. We're gonna set up executive, timeout to 5 minutes and 30 seconds. And we're gonna set up the login sync and then the login. Now we're gonna go into the line console 0. Same thing, we're gonna set a password, set up the executive time, and then we're gonna login sync. And then you're gonna log in, and then you're gonna exit. Now we're gonna go into the auxiliary, line auxiliary 0, and we're gonna set up a password. An executive time of 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Login synchronous, and then login. And we'll take you all the way back to the executive mode where I can save my running configuration by typing copy run space start. The entire command is copy startup config startup hyphen config space or copy running hyphen config and then space startup hyphen config. So if I can just show you real quick, these are my options for copy. So this is the entire command, copy running config and then a space startup config. All right, but you can shorten it by simply typing copy run start. Okay, now we're going to encrypt the passwords. That is done in global configuration. So we're going to do service password. And then let me save my running configuration again. Now we're going to configure the interfaces. So let's figure out what we're trying to do here. We're going to configure S01 with that IP addressing scheme, and we're going to configure S00 with this IP addressing scheme. All right, and that's my DCE right there, so that's gonna need a clock, right? Okay, so config T, interface serial 01, interface serial 0/1. I'm gonna add a description here. This is a link to R1. Okay, and we're gonna set an IP address of 192.168.1.129. With a subnet mask of 255.255.255.224. It's really easy to make a mistake, mistype a number, as you have noticed. So you have to be you have to get accustomed to do your own quality control as you're typing these commands. Make sure that you are double checking that the numbers are right. Because if you do all the configuration and then come back, you're gonna have some connectivity issues, and then you're gonna have to troubleshoot. And that happens. So it's not really that big of a deal if that happens, but you want to try to get this down the first time, most of it as possible. We're gonna set the no shutdown here, and that's gonna turn on our serial interfaces there. Now I'm gonna go into my interface serial 00. Okay, and that's this one over here on the right, and we're gonna set up a description. This is a serial link to router 3, and we're gonna set up an IP address here of 192.168.1.162 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.224. Okay, and as you can see, again, it's really easy to make a mistake. Okay, so checking yourself as you're doing this is definitely a good practice. I'm gonna set up a clock rate of 6400 here, or 64,000 rather, and we're gonna do the no shutdown. Okay, this serial is not gonna be turned on until I configure router 3. Okay, we're gonna type int and then copy run star to save all of our configuration, our running configuration, into the non-volatile random access memory. I can double check my configurations by typing show run, and as you can see, my host name here is set, service password is set. You cannot see the passwords in plain text. No IP domain lookup is set. There's a description for each interface. There's my clock rate. My line console has a password. As you can see, it's also encrypted. Auxiliary also has a password, and so is VTY. Okay, let's save that again and get out of here. Now, I'm gonna walk over to router number 3. And same thing, I'm gonna connect to this device using the console connection. Fire that up. Open a terminal. And we're gonna conduct the exact same here, except we're gonna use that configuration there. Okay, so what we do is we'll enable config T host R3. We're gonna set up passwords. Enable password and enable secret. will limit the ability for people to log into these to the different levels of privileges. We're gonna set up a banner MOTD, message of the day. This is router 3. I'm gonna say that authorized access only. I'm gonna enclose that in a number sign. Then we're gonna do no IP domain. Lookup. And then I'm gonna set up the telnet. So that's interface VTY 0 to 15. I'm sorry, it's line VTY 0 to 15. Notice that when you make a mistake, it's gonna let you know here that you made a mistake. But in here, once this line shows, I'm inside the line, the VTY line, so I'm gonna set up a password. Set up an executive timeout. Login synchronous, and then we're gonna log in. We're gonna go to the line console 0 here, set up a password. Set up an executive time, 5 minutes and 30 seconds. We're gonna log in synchronous. We're gonna log in. We're gonna go to the line auxiliary 0, set up a password. Set up the executive timeout. Do login synchronous. Exit. And I'm gonna copy run start right away because I want to make sure that I don't lose my configuration that I just did. Now I'm gonna encrypt the passwords. So go back to the config T, service password. That encrypts the passwords. Now I can configure the interfaces and add a description. So let's configure the serial 01 first. I'm gonna go here, interface, serial 01. That takes me into that interface. We're gonna add a description. This is a serial link to R2. To R2. We'll just leave it at that. And we're gonna set an IP address. 192.168.1.161. With a certain mask of 255.255.254. And we're gonna, doing like that, IP address. 192.168.1.161. There you go. I guess I type an F over there by mistake. Again, this thing is very unforgiving. And we're gonna do the no shutdown. As you can see, our connections are now fully operational for the serial end. Now we're gonna configure the fast Ethernet 00. So let me go into that interface FA00. We're gonna add a description. This is a link to LAN okay, and IP address 192.168.1.65 with a certain mask of 255.255.192. I'm gonna issue the no shutdown command that turns that device on. Let me end here and go to copy run start. Okay, so now that I've done that configuration, I don't need this laptop anymore. I can put it away. Okay, now let's see what happened here. Let's reconfigure this device. For some reason it's not on. So 66, 192, 168, 65, that looks about right. Okay. All right, let's just change the cable. For whatever reason, it's not working, so I'm gonna choose fast Ethernet 01 to my fast Ethernet here. Sometimes, you have to think about all the layers of the OSI model when you're doing this type of configuration. Okay, so with that said, I should be able to ping from this computer. And you run a command, ping 192.168.1.1. That's my default gateway, and as you can see, that's responding. So I should be able to telnet into this device using the IP address. Okay, so I am going to telnet 192.168.1.1. And there it is, right? There's my prompt to access this device using telnet port 23. Okay, now I'm going to do a short run to make sure that all my configuration is set the way it's supposed to. Okay, now we're gonna configure this router to be able to access other routers using the name of the router. So it's IP host 192.168.1. No, it's IP host and the host name. So we're gonna say R2. We're gonna connect to that router using 192.168.1.129. Okay. And I'm gonna say IP host here, R3, 192.168.1.161. Okay. I'm gonna do a short run to make sure that it took the configuration, and there it is. Just below no IP domain, I'm saying if I type R2, I want you to use that IP address to access that device. So now I can access that device using a host name or an IP address. And there's the rest of my configuration. Okay, so let's try it. Telnet R2. There you go. It's obviously it's sensitive, case sensitive, but I was able to access it using the name. You can use name or IP address. Okay, I'm inside R2. I'm going to enable, and I'm gonna do a short run here to check my configuration. Everything looks good and dandy. Now I'm gonna do IP host R1. I want router 2 to access router 1 through 192.168.1.130. And I want router 2 to access router 3 through 192.168.1.161. Okay, now we should be able to telnet into router 3. There you go. And we're gonna do the same thing here. So let's do a short run. Okay. My IP addresses, so we're checking all the numbers look correct. Now we're gonna set the host name, IP host router 2 through 192.168.1.162. IP host router 1 through 192.168.1.130. Okay, now I can start pinging from here. So let's ping 190. Let's ping R3, R2. There it is, right? The exclamation marks indicate that those are good pings. So I'm gonna ping R1, and nothing's happening, right? Okay, let's give it a second. Let's see if it resolves, and it didn't. So it's not resolving. Why is it not resolving? It's not resolving because we need to set up routing protocol. Okay, and then we're gonna check for connectivity. So how are we gonna do that? Let's see. I'm in router 3 right now, and what we're gonna do is go to config t, type in. This is how you configure the Ospf. You go router Ospf, and the one here indicates that we want process number 1 to be turned on, and then we're going to tell this router which networks to advertise. It's going to advertise network 192.168.1.64 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.192. And we're going to put all these routers in an area 0. We're also going to advertise 192.168.1.160 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.224, also in area 0. Okay. We're going to end from here. Copy run star. Okay, let me exit. Now we're inside router 2. I'm going to do the same thing, router Ospf, turn on process number 1, and I want you to advertise network 192.168.1.160 with this subnet mask 224 in area 0. Okay. Again, if you mistype this thing, it's not very forgiving. So 192.168.1.160 with the proper subnet mask and the proper area 0. And I also wanted to advertise network 192.168.1.129 with a subnet mask of that 224 and also area 0. We might have to come back here and set some static IP routes because there's networks on the other end that that may need to be advertised. So maybe we can try to do that. Let's see if I can do network 192.168.1.0 255.255.255.192 through port 00. Didn't like that. Okay, that's okay. We'll come back to this later. So let me end. Copy run star. And I'm gonna exit out of router 2. Go to router 1. My command prompt is in router 1, so now I can go to. Let me do show run first, just to confirm I got all my configurations up and running. Okay. Now we're gonna do router Ospf 1, and then we want this router to advertise network 192.168.1.0 with the proper subnet mask of 192. Then we put in all these routers in the same area. Network 192.168.1.128 the right side and mask, and area 0. Okay. So let me exit from here. Now let's try to check for connectivity. I'm going to ping 192.168.1.1, and looks like it's coming back with a ping. Now I'm gonna ping the next interface, ping 192.168.1.130, and it's coming back, so that's good. Now I'm gonna ping 192.168.1.129. That's my next interface, and it's coming back with a ping, so that's beautiful. So I'm gonna ping 192.168.1.162, and it's also responding. And I'm going to ping 192.168.1.161, and it's also responding. So that's router 3. And I'm going to ping finally this PC1. The IP address is 192.168.1.66. And it didn't respond the first packet because it was trying to resolve for a MAC address. But it looks like overall we have full connectivity in this network. And that's about that, at least for this lesson. But that should get you through most of the skills that you need to know for at least for level 1 of CCNA, or ICND1. Thank you for your time, and I hope that this is very helpful to you.